The war in Ukraine is a war in Europe. Elena Zelenskaya wrote an open letter to the world media. March 9. The First Lady of Ukraine addressed the world with an appeal to close the sky, and also spoke about all the horrors of the war that Russia launched against our people. It is the 14th day of the war that Russia started against Ukraine. Our struggle for peace and freedom goes on all fronts. Everyone in his place contributes to our common victory over the Russian occupier. The First Lady turned to the world in this difficult time for Ukraine. On her Instagram page, Elena Zelenskaya published an open letter to the world media in response to numerous requests for an interview. I am now being approached by media representatives from around the world asking for an interview. I want to answer this letter to everyone at once. This is my testimony from Ukraine. On the day, our hearts shed tears and fill with anger for our Ukraine, which the Russians and Putin are trying to tear apart. They will never succeed. In Ukraine, we do not appreciate gifts and flowers, but we see the cruel realities because of the war that Russia unleashed. These days, probably, the hardest thing is for little patients who are in the basement of the largest children's hospital in Ukraine. Children in Akhmatdut with the most terrible and difficult diagnoses are now being treated in a bomb shelter. Elena Zelenskaya published stunning photos with the kids and their loved ones on her official Instagram. The First Lady also spoke about how the work on the provision and organization of humanitarian assistance is now going on. I am currently receiving and processing proposals for humanitarian aid from around the world. The main directions are treatment, shelter for children deprived of parental care, providing conditions for continuing education. With Poland and France, we are working on the possibility of accepting young Ukrainians to continue treatment. Work has begun on sending children abroad. With Turkey, we are working on the possibility of providing shelter for orphans. We are discussing with Lithuania the idea of creating an educational and cultural hub for our children. After the horrors of war and the difficulties of evacuation, they need more than ever the opportunity to socialize, communicate with peers, learn and adapt. Elena Zelenskaya also shared that she receives a lot of help and support from the First Ladies of other countries, including Brigitte Macron, Diana Norsidine, Emin Erdogan and Agati Judy. Our children must be cured, among other things, of psychological trauma, to live in a peaceful Ukraine. It is very important to know that we are not alone now, because we are fighting not only for ourselves. It was impossible to believe what happened a little over a week ago. My country was peaceful, and cities, towns, and villages were full of ordinary life. On February the 24th, we woke up with the announcement of the start of the war. Tanks crossed the Ukrainian border, planes burst into our space, cities were surrounded by missile launchers. I testify that despite the assurances of Kremlin propagandists, who call this invasion a special operation, is the killing of civilians. The worst thing is to read about child victims. About 8-year-old Alice, who died on Okturka Street, her grandfather tried to cover her with his body. Or about Polina from Kiev, who died from the shelling together with her parents. About 14-year-old Arseny. In the once peaceful suburb of the capital, a fragment hit the boy in the head, and the ambulance simply could not reach under fire. When Russia says once again that it is not waging war against civilians, I will be the first to name them. I testify that our women and children now live in bomb shelters and basements. You have probably seen these pictures from the Kyiv and Kharkiv metro, where people lie with their little ones and pets. For some spectacular shots, but for Ukrainians for a week this is a new terrible reality. There are cities where families cannot leave the bomb shelters for several days. Our children teach lessons in the basements. And they are born there, because maternity hospitals had to move underground. The first child of the war, who saw not the peaceful sky, but the concrete ceiling of the basement, was born on the first day of the invasion. Now there are several dozen children who have never known peace in their lives. I testify that this war is being waged against the civilian population not only by shelling. People who depend on constant treatment and care cannot receive it qualitatively. Is it easy to inject insulin in the basement? And get asthma medication under fire? Not to mention the thousands of cancer patients for whom vital chemotherapy and radiation have been postponed. Quote, continuation, in the carousel. We hope the world will listen to the words of Elena Zelenskaya. We are infinitely proud of our army. We thank the defenders for their courage and self-sacrifice. Victory is near.
Пора узнать, что я могу, на помощь призову к себе. Во льдах навечно отпусти и забудь, что прошло уже не вернуть. Отпусти и забудь, новый день укажет путь.
Браво, браво, умница! Умница!
Дякую за мирну нічку, за солодкий тихий сон. Бережіть нашу Україну, не віддайте її в полон.